Have you ever noticed how often we're told to focus on solving problems? It seems like from the moment we wake up, we're conditioned to think what's wrong, what needs to be fixed. It's almost like we've become experts in pointing out everything that's not working, but rarely do we pause and ask, what am I actually good at? What skills do I have that can make a difference today? Take a moment and think about that. How many times today or this week have you caught yourself wrapped up in problems, whether it's at work, at home, or even in your personal life? It feels like there's always something that needs to be fixed, doesn't it? But here's the thing. Focusing on problems is a never-ending cycle. Problems multiply. The more you look for them, the more they seem to show up. Now, I'm not saying we should pretend problems don't exist. Well, of course, life is full of challenges, but what I'm asking you to consider is, what if, instead of spending all your time and energy worrying about what's wrong, you started focusing on what you do? What if you put your attention on developing the skills that make you stronger, better, and more capable? I remember a time in my own life when I was overwhelmed by problems. There was a period when everything seemed to be going wrong. My career wasn't where I wanted it to be. My relationships were strained, and every day felt like I was just putting out fires. I'd wake up thinking about the problems of yesterday, carry them through the day, and go to bed with a mind full of everything that needed fixing. It was exhausting. One day, someone asked me a simple but powerful question. What are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? I was so used to being in problem-solving mode that I hadn't thought about it in ages. But the more I reflected, the more I realized that I had been neglecting the skills that had always made me feel alive and purposeful. Instead of focusing on building those skills, I had spent all my energy reacting to problems. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever found yourself so deep in the issues of life that you lose sight of what you're actually capable of? We all have. But here's the good news. The moment you choose to shift your focus, things begin to change. When you start paying attention to your strengths, your skills, something amazing happens. Problems don't disappear, but they start to shrink in importance. You realize that you have the tools to handle them because you've been developing your abilities all along. Let me ask you, what skills have you been ignoring? What talents do you have that you haven't given the time or attention they deserve? Think about the things that light you up, the things that come naturally to you, but maybe you've taken for granted because you're too busy worrying about everything else. I'm sure there's at least one thing. Maybe you're a great communicator, but you've been too focused on that one relationship that isn't going well. Or maybe you're an excellent problem solver at work, but lately, all you've been thinking about is the workload that feels like it's never ending. When you focus on your skills, you tap into your potential. You start to see possibilities instead of obstacles. And isn't that what life is about? Growth, expansion, becoming the best version of yourself? You can't do that by staying stuck in the mindset that everything's broken. You do that by recognizing what you already have and building on it. Think of it like a garden. If all you ever do is pull weeds, the garden will never thrive. Sure, you've gotten rid of the weeds, but there's no beauty, no growth. On the other hand, if you spend your time planting, watering, and nurturing the flowers, eventually the garden becomes so full of life that the weeds don't even stand a chance. It's the same with your skills. If you focus on nurturing what's already growing within you, the problems will become smaller, more manageable. When you focus on building your skills, you inspire others to do the same. You become an example. Have you ever noticed how certain people seem to handle challenges with grace? It's not because they don't have problems. It's because they've spent more time developing the strengths that allow them to rise above those challenges. What are you good at? What can you do today to nurture that skill, to give it more attention? If you don't know, take some time after this to reflect. Write it down. Because here's the truth. When you focus on what you're capable of, life feels different. You feel empowered instead of overwhelmed. You might be thinking, but I still have real problems that need solving. And yes, you do. We all do. But when you're focused on your skills, those problems don't define you. They become stepping stones, challenges that help you grow even more. I remember another moment in my life where this shift in focus became crystal clear. I was working with someone who felt stuck in their career. Every conversation we had was about all the things going wrong. An overbearing boss, missed opportunities, the feeling that they weren't being recognized for their hard work. But when I asked them to tell me what they were good at, they went quiet for a moment. Then slowly, they started listing off skills they hadn't thought about in years. They realized they were great at managing people, they were organized, and they had a talent for seeing the big picture in any situation. As soon as they shifted their focus from the problems at work to the skills they had, they started to see new opportunities. They began using those skills to change the way they interacted with their boss, and soon they were in a position where their talents were being noticed. The problems hadn't vanished overnight, but the person had changed. They were now leading with their strengths rather than being weighed down by the issues around them. That's the power of focusing on your skills. It shifts your perspective. It changes how you see yourself and how you handle life's challenges. So today I'm asking you to make a shift. Stop giving all your energy to the problems and start giving it to the skills that are waiting to be developed. Ask yourself, what can I do today to build on what I'm already good at? How can I nurture the talents that make me unique? Because the more you focus on your skills, the more empowered you become, and the more those problems start to take care of themselves. Why do we tend to focus so much on problems? Have you ever wondered why? Despite your best intentions, your mind keeps coming back to what's wrong. It's as if no matter how many good things happen, our attention gravitates toward the problems. It's not your fault. It's simply human nature. You see, our brains have evolved to protect us. Thousands of years ago, being on the lookout for danger kept us alive. If there was a threat, a predator, a natural disaster, our brains would sound the alarm, helping us avoid harm. And while we don't face the same kinds of threats today, that wiring is still there. Our minds are designed to spot what's wrong before they appreciate what's right. This is what's known as negativity bias. We're naturally more sensitive to negative information than positive information. We're quick to notice what's lacking, what's broken, what could go wrong. That's because at one point in time, noticing the negative meant survival. But here's the thing. What once helped us survive can now keep us stuck. When all you see are problems, you begin to believe that life is nothing but challenges. You start living in a state of constant stress, always waiting for the next thing to go wrong. What happens when your focus is always on the problems? How does that impact your mindset? When you're constantly tuned in to what's wrong, it creates a kind of tunnel vision. You can't see anything else. Your world starts to shrink because all your attention is being funneled into the problems, and that takes up so much mental and emotional energy. Have you ever felt that? Have you ever been so focused on an issue that it seemed to block out everything else, even the good things? That's what the negativity bias does. It tricks us into thinking that the problems are the whole picture, when in reality, they're just a small part of it. How does that mindset affect your daily life? Think about a time when you were really stressed. Maybe you were worried about money, a relationship, or something at work. When you woke up in the morning, what was the first thought that crossed your mind? It was probably related to that problem, wasn't it? And then you carried that stress with you through the day. It affected how you interacted with people, how you approached tasks, even how you saw yourself. That's the trap of focusing solely on problems. It creates a cycle, one where problems feed your anxiety, and anxiety makes the problems feel even bigger. What would your life look like if you gave those skills more attention? Really imagine it. If you focused on what you're good at, on what lights you up, instead of constantly trying to fix what's broken, how would things change for you? Let me tell you about a woman I once met. She was a single mother working a stressful job that she didn't enjoy. Every day, she was dealing with one problem after another: work issues, money issues, parenting challenges. She was stuck in that problem. Focused mindset. She'd wake up thinking about all the things that weren't working, and that's where her energy went. By the time she got to bed at night, she was exhausted, and she felt like nothing was ever getting better. We had a conversation one day, and I asked her, what's something you're really good at? Something that makes you feel alive. She thought about it and told me she used to love writing. She hadn't written anything in years, but it was something she had always been passionate about. So I encouraged her to carve out just 30 minutes a day to write. Nothing more, just 30 minutes. She was hesitant at first. She told me she didn't have time, that there were too many problems to deal with. But eventually, she agreed to try. A few weeks later, she came back to me, and there was a lightness in her that I hadn't seen before. She had started writing again, and it was like a switch had flipped in her mind. Instead of waking up each day dreading the problems, she woke up excited to spend time developing her skill. And do you know what happened? Those problems that once seemed overwhelming started to feel smaller. She was still dealing with challenges, but they didn't consume her anymore because her energy was going into something she loved. Eventually, that writing turned into a blog, which turned into a side business. And today, she's doing work she's passionate about. Her problems didn't magically disappear, but her focus shifted, and that made all the difference. This shift in focus is not just about feeling better in the short term. It's about creating a foundation that allows you to handle problems from a place of strength. When you're constantly in problem-solving mode, you're in survival mode. You're reacting to life rather than creating it. But when you focus on building your skills, you become proactive. You're no longer just trying to get through the day. You're building something that will last, something that will support you no matter what challenges come your way. And here's the thing. When you focus on your skills, you start to see the world differently. You begin to see opportunities instead of obstacles. You start to approach challenges with curiosity instead of, you stop asking, how can I fix this? And start asking, how can I use my strengths to navigate this? It's a subtle shift, but it changes everything. Now, I'm not saying you should ignore your problems. Life will always have its challenges, and there will always be things that need your attention. But when you build your skills, you become better equipped to handle those challenges. You approach them from a place of empowerment rather than frustration. You see, skills don't just help you succeed. They help you grow. They stretch your capacity. They give you a sense of mastery that no problem can take away from you. Let's talk about some practical steps you can take to shift your focus from problems to skills. The first thing you can do is set aside time each week to practice something you're passionate about. It doesn't have to be hours on end. It could be 30 minutes, just like that woman I mentioned earlier. But make it non-negotiable. Block it out in your calendar and treat it like an appointment you can't miss. This is your time to develop a skill that brings you joy, something that makes you feel more alive. Another thing you can do is create a skills list. Write down all the things you're good at. Everything from personal strengths to professional skills. Don't limit yourself to what you think is useful or practical. Include everything that comes to mind, even if it seems small or insignificant. Once you have that list, choose one or two skills that you want to focus on for the next month. Make a plan to practice those skills regularly and track your progress. And here's a simple but powerful practice. Every time you catch yourself focusing on a problem, pause for a moment and ask yourself, what skill can I use or develop right now to move through this? It's a subtle but important shift in mindset. Instead of getting bogged down by the problem, you're actively looking for ways to grow through it. You're turning the challenge into an opportunity for development. I want to share another story with you. This one about a man who was struggling in his career. He had been working in the same job for years, and he was starting to feel stuck. He was constantly frustrated with his boss, with the workload, with the direction that he felt like no matter what he did, there was always a problem to deal with. So we sat down and talked about his strengths. It turns out he had a real passion for technology, specifically coding, but he hadn't pursued it because his job didn't require it. I encouraged him to start learning more about coding in his spare time. He was hesitant at first. He thought it was too late to start learning something new, and he wasn't sure it would ever lead to anything. But he gave it a shot. He started taking online courses, practicing coding in the evenings after work. And something amazing happened. Not only did he start to enjoy his evenings more because he was doing something he loved, but he also began to see new possibilities for his career. He eventually transitioned into a tech-related role within his company. And today, again, his problems didn't disappear overnight, but by focusing on building a new skill, he opened up a path that he couldn't see before. His frustration with his job faded because his focus was no longer on what wasn't working. It was on what could work. I want you to really think about this. What skills do you have that you've been neglecting? What would your life look like if you made those skills a priority? How would things change for you if, instead of trying to fix every problem, you started building something lasting, something that could carry you through the ups and downs? The truth is, focusing on skill development is not just about solving problems. It's about living a life that's more aligned with who you are. When you focus on your skills, you're tapping into your potential. You're building a foundation that makes life's challenges feel less daunting because you know you have something solid to stand on. You're not just surviving, you're thriving. So today, I want to encourage you to make that shift. Stop chasing the shadows of problems. Instead, invest your time, your energy, your heart into building the skills that matter to you. Because when you do that, you're not just solving problems. You're creating a life that is rich, fulfilling, and deeply rewarding. And isn't that what we're all really after? I know what some of you might be thinking right now. This all sounds great, but my problems are real, and I can't just ignore them. I hear you. We've all been there. It's natural to think that if we don't focus on the problems, things will fall apart. We tell ourselves that our problems are urgent, demanding our full attention. But here's something I want you to reflect on. How many times have you said those words, "I can't ignore my problems"? How often have you believed that if you didn't solve every single issue, something terrible would happen? And yet, has worrying about those problems made them go away? Has focusing solely on what's wrong in your life made things better in a lasting way? Here's the shift I want you to consider. It's not about ignoring your problems. Not at all. It's about approaching them from a different place, from a place of strength, from a place where you're grounded in your abilities. You see, when you're caught up in problem-solving mode, you're often operating from a place of weakness, from a space where you feel stuck, overwhelmed, maybe even powerless. But when you're focused on building your skills, on cultivating what's already inside of you, you approach those same challenges with a completely different energy. Think about it. What's the worst thing that could happen if you spent more time honing your skills and less time obsessing over your problems? Would the world really fall apart? Would the roof cave in? Or would you perhaps start to notice that some of those problems begin to feel a little less heavy? Let me give you a simple example. Imagine you're someone who's constantly stressed about finances. Your mind is always focused on how little money there is, on the bills you need to pay, on the debts that seem to grow no matter what you do. That's your problem. Now, if you focus entirely on the problem, on the lack, on the fear, on the what-ifs, your energy becomes wrapped up in scarcity. You're thinking contracts. Solutions feel distant because your mind is stuck in survival mode. But what if, instead of obsessing over the problem, you shifted your focus to building a skill? Maybe you're great at organizing things, or you've always had a passion for helping others. What if you poured your energy into refining those skills? You might start a side hustle that brings in extra income. Or maybe you'll find ways to save money by using your organizational skills to budget more effectively. Do you see how this shift works? It's not about ignoring the problem of finances. It's about using your strengths to approach it from a place of empowerment. Let's take a moment to engage with this. Think about a problem that's been weighing on you. Maybe it's a relationship issue or something at work, or maybe it's your health. Now, ask yourself, what skills do I have that could help me navigate this problem in a different way? What strengths can I rely on to face this challenge? Maybe it's your ability to communicate clearly, or your knack for staying calm in stressful situations. Whatever it is, hold on to that thought. Now, here's the thing. When you shift your mindset like this, resistance often creeps in. It's like your brain doesn't want to let go of the old way of thinking. You might even feel a little uncomfortable, like you're betraying your responsibilities by not giving all your energy to the problem. That's okay. That's normal. but it's also something you can overcome. One tool you can use to overcome this resistance is a simple mental exercise. The next time you find yourself slipping back into problem-focused thinking, I want you to pause and ask yourself, what's the story I'm telling myself right now? Because often, the stories we tell ourselves are rooted in fear. If I don't focus on this problem, things will get worse. If I don't worry about this, I'm being irresponsible. But are those stories true? Or are they just fear-based thoughts trying to keep you stuck? Once you identify the story, you're telling yourself, I want you to rewrite it. Instead of, I have to focus on this problem or everything will fall apart, try telling yourself, I'm going to focus on what I can control, on my skills, on my strengths, and trust that solutions will emerge. It's a small shift, but it creates a huge difference in how you feel and how you approach the situation. Another tool you can use is visualization. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a version of yourself that's deeply connected to your skills, a version of yourself that approaches challenges with calm and confidence because you know you're equipped. See yourself in a situation that used to feel overwhelming, and instead of reacting with stress, see yourself responding with grace and strength. This version of you isn't ignoring the problem, far from it, but you're dealing with it from a place of power, from a place where your skills are front and center. Hold on to that image. Let it guide you the next time resistance shows up. Let's go back to that earlier question. What's the worst thing that could happen if you spent more time developing your skills? Now let's flip it. What's the best thing that could happen? What if, by focusing on your strengths, you started to see opportunities where you once saw obstacles? What if, by giving your energy to what you're good at, you created new possibilities that you couldn't even imagine before? What if those problems you're so worried about started to resolve themselves because you approached them with a different mindset? You see, resistance to change is natural. It's a part of being human, but it doesn't have to control you. You can acknowledge it, recognize it for what it is, and then move forward anyway. You can choose to shift your focus, to invest in your skills, to believe that you are capable of handling whatever comes your way, because problems will always exist. They'll come and go. But your skills, your strengths, those are constant. They're with you for life. So when you feel the pull to focus on what's wrong, when resistance tries to drag you back into the cycle of problem solving, I want you to remember this. Your true power lies not in fixing what's broken, but in building what's strong. So how will you choose to move forward today? Will you let resistance keep you stuck, or will you step into the strength that's already within you? The choice is yours. And when you choose to focus on your skills, you're not just solving problems, you're transforming your life. I think for a moment about how different your life might be if you shifted your focus. If instead of fixating on problems, you concentrated on developing your skills. How would that ripple out and affect the way you live? Not just in your work, but in your relationships, your health, even the way you feel about yourself when you wake up in the morning. You see, when you begin to focus on building your skills, it doesn't just stop with one area of your life. It's not confined to just your job or a specific project you're working on. There's a ripple effect that starts to happen. One small shift in focus, one investment in your strengths can touch every aspect of your life. Let me explain. We often think of skills in terms of our careers, right? We think about learning something new to get a promotion or to be more successful at work. And that's true. Developing your skills can absolutely transform your career. But it goes much deeper than that. Think about your relationships. How do you approach them right now? Are you more focused on what's wrong in your relationships, what's missing, what's frustrating you, where the other person is falling short? Or are you focused on what you can bring to the table, on the qualities you can strengthen to make those relationships better? How could your relationships improve if you focus more on what you can offer rather than what's wrong? What if, instead of nitpicking every little thing your partner, friend, or colleague does that annoys you, you focused on becoming a better listener, or improving your communication skills, or even working on your patience? You see, just like in your career, focusing on building a skill, whether it's a skill of being more empathetic, more understanding, or simply being present, creates a ripple effect in your relationships. you start to notice that the things that used to bother you don't seem so big anymore. Why? Because you're approaching the relationship from a place of strength. You're focusing on what you can control, on what you can improve. And when you do that, it changes the dynamic. You stop feeling like you're at the mercy of the other person's actions, and you start realizing that you have the power to make things better simply by building your own skills. I once worked with someone who was struggling in her marriage. She was caught in a cycle of focusing on everything her husband wasn't doing. He wasn't listening, he wasn't helping out around the house, he wasn't showing affection the way she wanted. She had a long list of problems. She could recite at a moment's notice. Sound familiar? One day I asked her, what if, just for a moment, you stop focusing on everything he's not doing and instead asked yourself, what can I do to improve this relationship? What skill could you build that would help here? At first she was resistant. After all, she felt like the problems were all on his side. But she took a step back and thought about it. And she realized that one area where she could improve was in her communication. She admitted that when things got tense, she tended to shut down. Instead of expressing her feelings calmly, she'd let them build up until they exploded. So she decided to work on that. She didn't tell her husband she was doing this. And what do you think happened? Over time, the dynamic in their relationship shifted. She was more open, more honest, and because she was no longer holding everything in, the tension between them started to ease. Her husband noticed the change, and he started responding differently too. She wasn't focused on fixing him or the problems she saw in their marriage. Instead, she was focused on improving her own skills, and that one shift rippled out and improved their entire relationship. Now, I want you to reflect for a moment. What's one skill you could develop today that would change your life over time? Maybe it's a professional skill. Maybe you've always wanted to learn a new language or become better at public speaking. Or maybe it's something more personal, like learning to manage your stress more effectively or becoming more mindful in your daily life. Whatever it is, think about how developing that one skill could ripple out and touch other areas of your life. Let's talk about health for a moment. We often separate our physical health from everything else. But the truth is, our overall well-being is deeply connected to how we live our lives and the skills we cultivate. How many of us have stressed over health problems endlessly, worrying about what might go wrong? What if, instead of focusing on the potential problems, we turned our attention to building healthy habits as a skill? What if we approached our health, not from a place of fear, but from a place of strength? Imagine developing the skill of mindfulness, for instance. Mindfulness is something you can practice, something you can build just like any other skill. And when you do, the ripple effect is remarkable. You become more aware of your body, more in tune with how you're feeling. You start making healthier choices, not because you're trying to avoid a health problem, but because you're in tune with what your body needs. You become more present in your life, less anxious about the future. And that calm, that presence flows into everything else, your work, your relationships, your sense of personal fulfillment. I want to share another story with you about a man named Tom. Tom was successful in his career, but he was constantly stressed and feeling disconnected from his family. He told me that no matter what he did, there was always something to worry about, something to... His job was demanding, and he felt like he was always one step behind. He didn't have time to relax, didn't have time for himself, and he felt like he was just going through the motions. We talked about what was going on, and I asked him what skill he thought would make the biggest difference in his life. At first, he said, I don't have time for that. I'm just trying to keep my head above water. But after some reflection, he realized that he'd been neglecting one crucial skill: time management. He was so focused on putting out fires at work and at home that he hadn't taken the time to develop a system for managing his time effectively. So Tom started small. He began blocking off time in his day for specific tasks. He set aside time for himself, time to relax, to spend with his family, to recharge. At first, it felt uncomfortable, like he was taking time away from fixing. But as he built this skill, he noticed something amazing. His stress levels went down. He felt more in control of his day, He was more present with his family because he wasn't constantly thinking about work. And guess what? His work improved too. By managing his time more effectively, he became more productive, less reactive, and more focused on what mattered. That's the power of the ripple effect. One small shift in focus, one skill developed, can touch every corner of your life. It can improve your work, deepen your relationships, boost your health, and give you a greater sense of fulfillment. What's one skill you could develop today that would change your life over time? It doesn't have to be something grand or overwhelming. Start small. Start with something that resonates with you, something that you know will make a difference, even if it's just a subtle shift. And then watch as that one change ripples out and transforms the way you experience the world. When you choose to focus on your skills, you're not just enhancing one area of your life. You're creating a foundation for growth, for happiness, for success. And that's a foundation that will support you in every aspect of your life for years to come. So here we are at the end of this conversation, but really, it's just the beginning of something much bigger for you. I want to remind you of what we've been talking about. Life doesn't change when we solve all our problems, because the truth is there will always be problems. You solve one, another one will pop up. That's just the way life is. But life really changes when you stop focusing on the problems and start focusing on your skills, on what you can do, on what you can build, on what you have inside of you that's waiting to be developed. Think back to everything we've covered today. We talked about how by nature we're wired to notice problems. It's human and it's normal, but we don't have to let that instinct run our lives. We don't have to be trapped in that endless loop of worrying, fixing, and stressing. You have a choice. You can choose every single day to focus on your strengths instead. You can choose to ask yourself not, what's wrong today? But what can I get better at today? Take a moment to reflect on your own life. What problems are you dealing with right now? And ask yourself, what would happen if, instead of trying to fix them, you focused on a skill you've been neglecting? Maybe it's something you've always wanted to do but haven't made time for. Maybe it's something you've been telling yourself isn't important or that you'll get to one day. Well, here's the thing. That one day is today. Let's make this practical. I want you to think of one skill, just one, that you can commit to focusing on for the next week. I don't want it to feel overwhelming, so start small. Pick something that matters to you. It could be something related to your work, your health, your relationships, or even a personal passion you've let fall by the wayside. Whatever it is, choose something that will make you feel stronger, more capable, more in control of your own life. Now, as you think about that skill, I want to ask you, how do you think working on that will impact the challenges you're facing right now? Let's say you've been stressed about work, feeling overwhelmed. What if, instead of stressing, you focused on building your organizational skills? What if you took 15 minutes every morning to plan your day, to get clear on your priorities? Do you think that might help ease some of that overwhelm? Or maybe you're feeling disconnected from your loved ones and it's been bothering you. What if, instead of focusing on what's wrong in your relationships, you worked on being more present, more patient, or more open with your feelings? Can you imagine how that shift might create a ripple effect, changing not just the way you feel, but the way your loved ones respond to you? You see, when you commit to building a skill, you're not ignoring your problems. You're approaching them from a place of strength. You're shifting your focus from what's lacking to what's possible. And when you do that, those problems start to lose their grip on you. They don't feel so overwhelming anymore because you're not looking at them with a sense of helplessness. You're looking at them through the lens of growth, of possibility, of your own personal power. And that's the beauty of focusing on skills. When you strengthen what's already inside of you, when you make the choice to develop your strengths, you naturally begin to solve your challenges, not by obsessing over them, but by becoming the kind of person who's equipped to handle them. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to make a promise to yourself right now. Promise that for the next week, you're going to focus on that one skill you just thought of. You're going to give it some time, some attention. You're going to work on it, even if it's just for a few minutes each day. And when you do, I want you to pay attention to how the rest of your life starts to shift. And you choose to focus on your skills. When you choose to build your strengths, your problems start to fade into the background. They stop feeling so urgent, so overwhelming, because your energy is now directed towards something far more powerful, your growth. Here's what's important for you to remember. You have everything you need already inside of you. All those skills, those strengths, they're already there. Maybe some of them are hidden. Maybe some of them have been neglected, but they're there just waiting for you to tap into them. And when you do, you'll start to see changes, not just in one area of your life, but across the board. You'll feel more confident, more capable. You'll approach challenges with a new mindset, not from a place of fear or frustration, but from a place of strength and possibility. And that's where true transformation happens. It's not about waiting for everything in your life to be perfect. It's about making the decision right now to focus on what you can do, what you can control, what you can build. It's about realizing that your life isn't defined by your problems. It's defined by how you choose to grow. So as we wrap up today, I want you to leave here with a sense of hope. Hope that comes from knowing you have the power to shape your own life, to build your own skills, to focus on your strengths. And as you do that, you'll start to notice that the challenges that once seemed insurmountable start to shrink in size. You'll start to feel more in control, more grounded, more capable of handling whatever comes your way. And the best part, this isn't a one-time thing. It's a choice you can make every single day. Every morning you can wake up and ask yourself, what skill can I build today? How can I focus on my strengths today? And when you do, you'll find that the more you focus on what you can do, the less power your problems have over you. So go out there, focus on your skills, and watch as the ripple effect transforms not just your challenges, but your entire life. You have the power to choose. Choose your strengths, choose your growth, and watch everything else fall into place.